Thank you very much. And the last person to speak in this round is Scott Miller from the People's Party of Canada.
You're on mute, Scott.
We'll start the clock once he actually starts.
Okay, thank you very much. You'd think I'd be used to Zoom by now after a year and a half. My name's Scott Miller. I'm a 32-year veteran of the high tech. My first job was at B&R at a university. Finished Carleton in the computer engineering. Went straight out into a job in operating systems at B&R, working with some awesome people. So I've been fortunate enough to spend my whole career here in between there and in Canada, working in local businesses. My family's here. I grew up mostly here, though I lived some time in the States. My parents are here, my siblings are here, my family's here. We've had a house in rural Canada for about 22 years. I've been very fortunate where we are during this pandemic because I have a couple of acres. We have maple trees to tap. We have places to walk. We have lots of places to walk the dog, as many rural people do. I'm also fortunate enough to have very good internet where I am because I'm just on the edges of good coverage. I ran for the PPC in 2019, and poor internet was a recurring theme there. It was, as you've heard from all these candidates, it was the #1 issue that people were concerned with. And it came to the forefront when they locked everything down, threw our kids out of school and said, yeah, just do it at home, when people couldn't, when we had next to nothing in bandwidth and dial-up. And it was bad enough if you had decent internet sitting with kids. It was absolutely horrendous if you didn't. And the reaction to that, the insane reaction, the lockdowns to the pandemic has cost many of our kids at least a year of school, and we'll have trauma for decades to come with this, the effect of this on kids. Get into the details. I've done a fair bit of volunteering over years. You'll have seen me beside the soccer fields in Carp for most of the last 20 years. My oldest daughter is now 24. She started in soccer there. I've been with all the kids. My middle son has special needs. He was born with Down syndrome, and I'm not the type to just drop him off at an activity. So I found myself volunteering for soccer, for scouts, for mostly many special needs programs around in Dunrobin and in Carp. So I've been here for a while. I know the area. My family's are dairy farmers. So I hear you and I understand.
Thanks very much. So I think that gives everyone a little bit of a sense of who you are and where you're coming from. So we'll move on to the questions, kind of the meat of the evening, as it were. So what we'll do now is Jennifer's the first on our list in this round. So Jennifer, we have 5 questions. So at random, I just need you to pick between the #1 and #5, and that's the question that we'll start with.
And if you mean Purdy, #3, please.
Okay.
So many Jens.
So little time.
The COVID-19 pandemic and the disproportionate impact it's had on older Canadians has amplified the need for a national senior strategy and called attention to long-standing issues with Canada's health and social system. What's your plan regarding a national senior strategy? Is it a priority for the federal government? And how would you approach the challenge of working with the provincial governments to provide adequate funding and oversight on healthcare and long-term care?
Yes, so definitely, obviously, this has been a huge issue throughout COVID. It was actually an issue if we're looking at long-term care. That was an issue pre-pandemic and has basically been ignored by governments for the last few decades since deregulation occurred. And so first of all, and I'm going to just talk about long-term care first. It's not the only issue, but simply because that's where most deaths in Canada have occurred. And so this long-term care right now is not in the Canada Health Act. It's a loophole. It should be in the Canada Health Act. That's a federal document. And by including the Canada Health Act, that would mean that it could no longer be privately run or privately delivered. It would have to be by either not-for-profits or publicly owned. So the first step that the Greens want to do is to put long-term care into the Canada Health Act, where it should have been all along, because people are making obviously millions of dollars, and a lot of Liberals and a lot of Conservatives have made a lot of money either as lobbyists or because they sat on boards and that sort of thing for Rivera and the other corporations that have been driving the long-term care crisis, basically. What else? Because thankfully, not all of us, and some of us could end up in long-term care tomorrow. If I had a catastrophic injury, I might not be able to stay at home. And so I could end up in LTC tomorrow, as could anybody who's listening in today. But thankfully, like many of us will not be at LTC or end up in long-term care. But we also, the Greens also are in favor of guaranteed livable income, because too many people are living in poverty or too close to the mark in their senior years. And that's completely inappropriate for people to be stressed out about making their rent or about making their property tax payments or mortgage payments, when they have already, done their time in the workforce and they should be. Thank you. Their golden years. So guaranteed livable income. Pharmacare is also on our platform, basic dental for low-income Canadians, and so that would also, include seniors. And then, of course, for long-term care, it has to come into the Canada Health Act. And pardon me, one more thing: mental health. We need a lot more funding for that, and it's for everybody across the age span.
Time.
Yeah, thanks very much. So next, the same question. We move to Jenna Suds. I'll repeat the question. You want me to repeat?
Sure, if you don't mind.
Not at all. So the question is, what's your plan regarding a national senior strategy and making it a priority for the federal government? And how would you approach the challenge of working with the provincial governments to provide adequate funding and oversight of healthcare and long-term care?
Excellent. Thank you very much. So, of course, Canadians value our universal healthcare system, and it's part of who we are as Canadians. I think we pride ourselves on it. And of course, as we age, as our parents age, as our grandparents age, we expect the healthcare system to be there for them. The Liberal Party is committed to providing better access to healthcare for all Canadians of all ages. We've had your back during COVID, and we will continue to do so. Specifically, as we move forward to improve long-term care and support Canadian seniors, we're committed to raising the wages for personal support workers, including a guaranteed minimum wage of at least $25 an hour. We will train up to 50,000 new personal support workers. We're also doubling the home accessibility tax credit, which will provide up to an additional $1,500 to help seniors stay in their homes longer by making them more accessible. We're also looking to improve the quality of long-term care homes in entirety. And we're doing that through introducing new national standards for long-term care. We are also, of course, continuing to implement strict infection prevention and control measures. And as I mentioned, working on our national standards for long-term care. I believe strongly that our Liberal government continues to invest in our seniors in smart ways. And this is our strategy towards for seniors moving forward. Of course, we have to work with the province. We'll continue to work with the provinces to make sure, as healthcare is administered at the provincial level, that we provide the support that's needed provincially. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jenna. Next on our list is Melissa Conrad from the New Democratic Party. Melissa, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I'm okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anytime.
Okay, thank you. So the NDP is definitely disheartened with what happened to our long-term care homes during the pandemic. And let's just be clear, this crisis didn't happen because of the pandemic. It was just brought to light as a result of the pandemic. Our long-term care homes have been neglected, if you will, allowed to be run down and for years and years and years. During the pandemic, shareholders and stakeholders in long-term care homes were paid out $78 billion, where thousands of people were dying and workers were being underpaid and PPE was not available. So the NDP would like to have long-term care homes made public and regulated so that they are, so that we ensure that our loved ones are fully taken care of and not taken advantage of, like what has been allowed for the last many years. We would like to introduce dental care for low income, pharmacare for all Canadians, so that our seniors don't have to be paying out of pocket for medications that they rely on or having to choose between food or shelter over medications. We also need to put in place community supports, because not all seniors want to or need to go into long-term care homes. Many of them are able to stay at home with the appropriate supports, which is the best way. So having more community supports and mental health supports for seniors as well, free of charge, is going to be very advantageous to people being able to stay at home longer. And a basic livable income is something that the NDP also wants to put forward. Along with affordable housing, we're going to build 500,000 units of affordable housing and 20,000 of those just in Ottawa. So if that's what seniors need to be able to stay at home or stay in a home instead of a long-term care home, we want to make that available for them and affordable for them at the same time.
Thank you, Melissa. The next to answer the question will be Jennifer McAndrew from the Conservative Party.
Great. Thank you so much. I echo what my fellow candidates say. The pandemic highlighted some real gaps that we had, and unfortunately, these were really prevalent, with our most vulnerable. And that's where, we have the provinces paying for nurses, doctors, and everything that goes into providing healthcare. The federal government has a responsibility to step up and help with these increasing costs. We can offer increased care for the most vulnerable in our community, and that is what we need to be doing. Our Conservative plan is looking to invest $60 billion into healthcare for everyone so that we can face these needs and we can get people employed and get more jobs. But specifically for long-term care, we'll be devoting $3 billion of infrastructure funding so that we can renovate these long-term care homes, so that we can provide better service for the residents. Ideally, in a perfect world, I have parents that are older, we want them to stay in their homes as long as possible. And we're trying to find ways to do that. We're encouraging families who care for them. We're providing a $200 a month credit to families if they're able to help keep their loved ones in their own home. We know that that's a better environment for them, and that gives them their independence. COVID was really, really hard on a lot of seniors, and we're going to be seeing the results of this for years to come. And I feel that the Conservative plan is looking at ways to, boost the number of personal support workers, a lot of things that are tangible and that can have a real impact sooner rather than later. Thank you.
And thank you. So finally on this question, and then we'll return, each person will get 30 seconds for short rebuttals, but we'll now hear from Scott Miller from the People's Party.
Thank you. The effect of the pandemic on seniors was an absolute disaster. As been pointed out, the seniors were the most vulnerable age group to this disease for biological reasons, and they're the ones that suffered the most. And the response that we had was just equally horrific. I mean, we all read the stories about people literally starving to death in their rooms in long-term care homes. Just absolutely abysmal. I would support, I don't know that there's specific platform elements in this, but we do need an inquest. We need to see what went right and what went wrong. And there's far more with seniors, far more went wrong than right in this aspect. Once they locked people down, they couldn't let the people see their families. They've just forbidden. And when you're that age, for many of these people, their families is all they have left. So just our reaction was unbelievable. In terms of going forward, it's clear that some of these mega corporations that run these care homes give individuals the level of care you might expect from a mega corporation, which is very detached. I would definitely support not fully public models have a poor history as well. Fully private don't, but some sort of cooperative arrangements. Look for a lot of flexibility in long-term care. something like I floated the other day, a condominium model where the owners of the building are the residents and their families. So they get a say in what goes on. They can help decide who you hire to make food, where you get your daily care people. They have a day-to-day impact. And that's if the seniors actually need to live in a separate residential building. Home care, of course, is the best, gives you the best outcomes. It's what people like the most. They want to be with their families, and done correctly, it's going to be the most cost effective. But we do need a lot of care. Somebody has to go into these homes every day to help people to get dressed, get showered, get ready. My mother and father have been married for 66 years, and they're looking at trying to find a care solution. And right now their options are they may be separated for the first time in 66 years, and that is unacceptable. I'm trying to get them to look at the Carp Commons, and we'll see. That looks like a nice spot. There's a brewery, there's an ice cream store. It's everything you need.
Thank you very much. So now each of you has 30 seconds to revisit this same topic. If you have anything you'd like to add or anything you'd like to comment on that any of the other candidates said. So going by the same order that we began with, we'll return to Jennifer Purdy from the Green Party.
Yeah, thank you. So the Green Party tends to be evidence-based, unlike the Liberals. And the Liberals taking care of seniors, there was a $500 one-time payment to seniors recently, right before the election, as it just happened to occur. There's no evidence for giving seniors $500. And if somebody is so close to the line that $500 is going to make a difference, we should be doing a guaranteed livable income. The Liberal government has been very aware of GLI and the benefit. It's basically a pension plan for seniors and for other people living with disabilities. But they refuse to even look at it right now. The other thing too is they know about the tens of thousands of people who died, 10,000 people who died in long-term care, and yet she would not commit to it because they do not want to include it in the Canada Health Act. The Fox will still be in charge of the hen house, and that is wrong.
Thank you very much. And thanks for sticking to the time. We do appreciate that. We don't want to have to mute people if they kind of go too far over. Jenna and Suds from the Liberal Party, do you have anything else you wanted to add?
Sure. I'd just like to add that the Liberal Party or Liberal government will, of course, work with the provinces and hold the provinces to account. Only the Liberals can do that because we are the only party with a national long-term care standard to be introduced that we will implement nationwide with the provinces. The Conservatives haven't proposed any serious plan to fix the issues, and the NDP are working to nationalize a system which won't fix anything, but will instead upset the apple cart. So the Liberals have the right approach, holding the companies and the provinces to account with a national standard. Thank you.
And thank you. Melissa Conrad from the New Democratic Party. Was there anything you wanted to add?
Thank you. I just want to highlight that the Liberal Party and the Conservative Party both are still going to allow the profit in long-term care homes. That's money that your loved ones are paying up to $5,000 a month, which most people can't afford. And when they can't, they're kicked out. And so the Liberal and Conservative parties are both very comfortable with the $78 billion that stakeholders were paid over the course of the pandemic while our loved ones died. And I think that is shameful. A national non-for-profit program is the only way to ensure care for every single senior, because you don't have to bring your credit card in to pay profits to shareholders.
Thanks very much. Jennifer McAndrew.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself there. I just wanted to correct what our Liberal candidate said. The Conservative Party is committed to investing $3 billion into the infrastructure, specifically for long-term healthcare projects. And I think that this is a big thing. You know, we can see the Liberals had no minister for seniors from 2015 to 2018. So in that time span, they would have had the opportunity to tackle some of these challenges that were brought about and made very evident, based on the pandemic we faced. We need to take care of our seniors, and the Conservatives have a plan to do that.
Thank you very much. And Scott Miller from the People's Party, did you have any other thing you wanted to say?
Yeah, I just reiterate that the pure private approach doesn't seem to work well. The pure public approach has obvious downfalls. We need to figure out some middle road, figure out what works. Multi-generational living is the commonplace in many cultures, many people around the world. I want to help take care of my parents. I'd love to have them with me, but it's got to be, people need support. It is really draining when you get the sandwich where you've got kids to take care of and parents to take care of. It is a problem for everybody, but we don't want them in institutions. So to support people in their homes as long as possible, as much as possible, is probably the middle road and probably the solution we should be shooting for.
Thank you very much. So now we'll go to the next question. And Jenna Suds is going to get to choose the question number, and she'll answer the question first. So question 3 is the one that we've used so far, Jenna.
I'll take question number 5.
Okay, question number 5. There's no longer a child fitness credit. It encouraged children to be active when sports are getting more and more expensive. How will your government promote healthy living for children and youth?
Sorry, just finding my unmute here. Thank you for the question. As a mom of 3 children, I certainly appreciate the need to make sure our kids are active. And I think that's especially true as we've come through these last 18 months. And our kids' activities aren't inexpensive. It costs a lot to keep our kids busy and to keep our kids active. The child fitness credit, as it was previously in place, unfortunately, it wasn't as effective as we would have liked it to have been. However, the Canada Child Benefit, that program in its entirety, has helped families. It's helped families put food on the table. It's helped families pay for kids' activities, and it's made life more affordable for Canadian families. So despite the fact that the fitness credit no longer exists, there is the Canada Child Benefit that is in place and is intended to provide more supports to families for a range of options. So this gives us the opportunity to determine what our priorities are as parents for our kids and how we spend that money. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. So the next on the list is Melissa Conrad from the New Democratic Party.
Thank you. Yes, I think we all definitely miss the child tax credit. I'm also a mom, have an active 12-year-old boy involved in many things, and it's important to them. And it was really important to keep our kids active, especially during this pandemic. And so I think that it's brought a lot of things to light for parents who want to put their kids into organized sports, and some of them can be quite costly. The Canadian Child Tax Benefit is definitely a resource that families can use. I know it's one that I have used to put my son in sports. And I think that we need to look at other options as well, because for some families, that money that comes in every month isn't extra money. It's money that they count on to support and feed their families, pay bills, and to clothe their children. So we need to look at what can be provided in partnership with the provinces to make sure that we keep our kids active and keep them out into sports in communities where they live and where they have opportunities that this tax benefit just won't cover.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So next to answer this question is Jennifer McAndrew. And I'm happy to repeat the question if you would like, Jennifer. Jennifer McAndrew from the Conservative Party.
Sure, I'll go ahead. Thank you so much for the question. You know, it's an issue that's very common in our family when we're sitting around the dinner table. I have 2 kids. You know, I'm a mom like everyone else. I have a son in hockey and a daughter in dance, and I think dance is more expensive than hockey. You know, and we've found ways, and you know, I've picked up additional jobs so that we can afford those. So, you know, we want our kids to be involved in as many activities and have the opportunities that they want to have, you know, and it's too bad that we lost the fitness credit in 2016 under the Liberal government and they removed it. I think this gave people, you know, it wasn't money that they necessarily counted on like they do when they get their monthly child benefit, but this was something that allowed them the opportunity to choose what activities their kids could try, you know, whether it was a dance class or hip hop or hockey. Like this credit on your taxes, I know that, you know, there's always more you think you can do, but this was an incentive for people to get their kids active and get them moving. Over the pandemic, I know how important it was. My kids were missing it. Doing virtual dance classes is not fun for anybody, myself or my students. And you know, I think that what we need to see is a way to move this forward and encourage parents to get their kids in activities. That's going to give them tons of building blocks and life skills that we need to see to contribute back to our community. And it's important. And I believe, like everyone, that this is an important issue. And I think that we really need that arts credit and sports credit at the end of the day.
Thank you very much. Next answer is Scott Miller from the People's Party of Canada.
The PPC approach would be to move away from boutique tax credits like that and leave money in people's pockets for whatever they want to do. Organized sports, organized activities, they're great, but this is a case where you needed to have receipts to show that you did things. We definitely took advantage of it. I definitely had multiple kids in multiple activities, and it was useful. But our approach would be to leave the money in your pocket from the beginning. If you want to send your kids to Scouts, fine. If you want to do dance, that's also great. But if you want to go vacationing and hike the Appalachian Trail, which would be great for fitness, you can do that too. If you want to go down to the Bruce Peninsula and walk from Tobermory to Collingwood, you can do that with your family, and that's awesome exercise. By leaving people their money, they get to choose what they want to do. Encouraging kids to be fit is good. Encouraging adults to be fit is good. Encouraging everybody to be fit is a good idea. But boutique tax credits are a problem. Of course, if you institute them, you're going to get some people cheering, and when you take them away, you're going to get people saying, "Well, you hate children." But no, we like everybody just the same, and we try not to pander to individuals. That being said, I like that one. That was a good. Always anything that'll give me money back in my pocket is a good idea.
Okay, Scott, thank you very much. And finally, in this round, for an answer, Jennifer Purdy from the Green Party.
Sorry, am I up?
Yes, you are.
Okay, I apologize. I'm having Wi-Fi issues once again tonight, so I am sorry about that. So anyways, yes. So in a way, I actually agree with Scott. The boutique tax credits are offered oftentimes by both the Liberal and Conservative parties, and they're not always that helpful. What they actually found with this tax credit in particular was that
Jennifer, we can't hear you.
We've lost your audio, Jennifer.
yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. Okay, I'm so sorry. And I'm actually at the corner of Terry Fox and March Road, and even here the Wi-Fi is terrible. So yes, I apologize. Tax credits, the issue is that for this situation, kids who would have played sports anyways played sports, and their parents got the tax credits. The other thing too is for lower income, you have to pay the money first and then you get the tax credit later on the following fiscal year. So that doesn't help people in terms of increasing access. What the Green Party would do, work around this issue. So guaranteed livable income so that people will know, like the CCB was helpful. It lifted some kids out of poverty. It didn't lift everybody out of all the kids out of poverty. So having a guaranteed livable income, and that means if you work at Tim Hortons, your income will be supplemented so that you don't have to be trying to pull down 2 or 3 jobs in order to make your rent and to have a kid in sports in this case. So guaranteed livable income, pharmacare, mental health, better health, access to mental health care as well, child care as well, in case there's younger siblings who are not quite at the age of playing sports. All these things will help to make life much more affordable for people so that kids can play sports, and the parents will also not be impoverished by that. The other thing too is depending on where people are living. I live in Dunrobin. I'll go to the Eagleson Park and Ride and go downtown. If we can get the LRT to Canada Carleton, that will buy more time. Because one thing, when you don't have a lot of money including for sports and for activities, most people won't have as much time as well. So the LRT becomes even more important for people who are having to commute downtown or wherever, and right now are relying on OC Transpo for that as well. Okay, thank you. So yeah, so in conclusion, we don't, the Green Party doesn't usually do boutique tax credits, but we want to work with the whole of the issue from an evidence-based approach. Thank you.
And thank you. So now we'll have 30 seconds from each candidate if there's something else they would like to comment on this. So we'll begin where we started with Jenna Suds from the Liberal Party.
As I mentioned, unfortunately, the child fitness credit wasn't as effective as one would hope. And only the wealthiest Canadians statistically were able to take full advantage of the credit. Lower income families statistically missed out. So instead, the Liberal Party is giving money directly to families and parents in Canada Carleton got over $5,000 last year on average of the Canada Child Benefit. No jumps and no hoops to jump through. This was just a straightforward program to support parents here in Canada Carleton. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Melissa, was there anything else you wanted to say on this topic?
Thank you. Yes. So I just want to add that the child tax benefit, the NDP are definitely looking to keep. And with the other supports that we're going to put in place, pharmacare, affordable childcare at $10 a day, affordable housing, the rental, the $5,000 for people renting. This will really help put extra money in people's pockets so that their kids will have the opportunity very possibly to go into sports. And the more affordable that we make life every single day and every single month for Canadians, the farther their dollar is going to stretch, the more money they're going to have to put back into the economy, and the better and sooner the economy will get back on its feet. Okay. And I think that it's important for the mental health of our children to be able to offer that to families.
Thank you, Melissa. Jennifer McAndrew, was there any other comment you wanted to make?
You know, I think that we're all about to face a cost of living crisis. And with this, we're going to see prices of everything skyrocket, including our children's activities. We need to have a plan and a conversation about how important these activities are for our kids' mental health. You know, we've taken away almost 2 years of their social development over the pandemic. We've instilled in them anxieties and fears that they've never had to face, and they need an outlet. And these activities, whether it's their love of hockey or rugby or robotics, we need to support those in a way that's affordable. And if inflation continues the way that it goes, no one will be able to afford these activities, the wealthiest or those who are not as fortunate. So I think that this is a larger conversation, and we really need to look at what inflation will be doing to our ability to participate in some of these activities. Thank you.
Scott?
I would actually echo that sentiment. The past boutique tax credits aside, fitness and children's health is going to be a huge issue in the years going forward because of what we've just done. So I think there's much bigger issues than worrying about $500 for this or that program, but we need to be prepared to invest some amount, but just to be ready to support the kids. Because this is going to be epic. This is going to be a generational sort of trauma, I suspect. We don't know. Kids are resilient, but this has been hard on a lot of kids. So I think there is a bigger issue with children's health and mental health going forward, much bigger than tax credits.
Thanks, Scott. And finally, Jennifer Purdy from the Green Party.
Hi, thank you. I'm hoping that you can still hear me. Let me know if you can't.
Yeah, we can.
Thank you. But yeah, obviously enhanced mental health care is part of the Green platform. The other thing too is, again, because yes, CCB has helped some families with kids, it hasn't helped everyone with kids to lift everyone out of poverty. And so a guaranteed livable income makes life much more affordable, takes the stress off. And with that, you know, with more time and less stress and a little bit more money, then kids can be a lot more active and also not be affected by the emotional stress going on in the house because they're not too sure if their bills can be paid at the end of the month. Thank you.
And thank you. So we turn now to the third question. And Melissa, it's your turn to pick the question number. So
great. I will take
question 3 and 5.
Question 1.
Okay, question number 1. So question 1, pretty simple one. Where do you live and how do you plan to be and stay connected with the rural residents of this riding?
That is actually a great question. So I live in the Kitimavik Hazeldean area in Canada, and I love taking my son out to Carp area, the creamery. We go to Alice's. We like being out there. I grew up in a rural town, and if it was feasible, I would definitely live farther out of the city. Was not brought up in a townhouse. I was brought up surrounded by cornfields and dairy farmers. So I think it's important that regularly connect with the rural constituents, whether it's town halls, whether it's farmers around the table, people looking to export, people looking to import, small businesses, because as we know, the rural challenges are often different than the more urban challenges. So I think it's important to stay extremely connected to the rural areas. As a union president, I represented 16 hospitals all the way out to Deep River, and the staff out there was only 5 people, but I regularly talked to them, connected with them, Zoom calls with them, because although their issues are extremely different, they're not any less important than the ones in the big cities at the Ottawa Hospital, where there's 500 and 600 members. So I think that it's important to always have lines of communication opened and hear the concerns of the rural constituents just as much as the urban constituents on a regular basis, just to know what's going on and how you can help them.
Okay, thank you very much. So Jennifer McAndrew from the Conservative Party, where do you live and how do you plan to be and stay connected with the rural residents of Canada Carleton?
Awesome. Thank you so much. I've been fortunate, as I said in my introduction, I have lived all over our riding. I've lived in Canada North, Glencairn. I grew up in Beaverbrook. And you know what? This past summer with the pandemic, we started our business in our garage. We were forced to sell our home because our landlord would not take advantage of the rent relief program because he said it was too complicated. So our options were to go bankrupt or go get more money. We sold our house. We bought the old Rump property. If you're familiar with the Carp Road area, it's just up from the Cat. So we bought there. We moved everything there. We're currently living there so that we can save our business. And it's been, the people of Carp have been so welcoming. My son got to play his first year with the West Carleton Minor Hockey League, despite the weird bubble that was going on. He got to play there. My daughter still dances with her friends out on, just as you go into Constance Bay, the dance studio that's there. We're members of the Carp Road BIA because we believe, in supporting other local businesses and representing our business as well. So it's been great. The more that we get into Carp, whether we're at Alice's, for breakfast or, at the Carp Farmers Market, our goal is just to be members of our community and contribute that way, because it's a great place. The kids love it, and now that we only moved 6 minutes from Canada North out to Carp Road, but it's a totally different change, and we are so excited to be part of the community here.
Thank you very much. Scott.
I think, should I be in the position where I'm representing Canada Carleton, I would offer myself for invitation to every rubber chicken dinner that every church group wanted to do. I would go down to the Cheshire Cat and see if I could reserve a table there for constituents to come to discuss their issues. I've been going to the Cheshire Cat for most of those 30 years since before the current proprietor even worked there. So I put my liver on the line to come and have people talk to me. But it is a big riding. I was talking to a supporter the other day from McLaren's Landing, and I've never been to McLaren's Landing. I haven't spent a lot of time out at Fitzroy Harbor. When I was out filling sandbags, Harbor Pizza was supplying the pizza there, and it was delicious. So I've since been back to Harbor Pizza, but I have not spent a lot of time out there. Every farmer, I would go and see what you're farming, and if you're a dairy farmer, I love raw milk. Don't tell the government. So yeah, you just have to make yourself available to everybody, certainly in the rural areas. Maybe I'd reserve a table at Big Rock Brewery down in the urban side, or Kawaboki. It's coming across as a theme. I forgot. Why breweries? Oh, that doesn't matter. So it's just a matter of making yourself available for concerns from anybody. That becomes your job. If that's my job, I'll do the best I can at it. And when I do a good job, I do it pretty well.
Thank you very much. Jennifer Purdy from the Green Party.
Hi, so I live in Dunrobin on 6 Line Road, just around Barry Side Road, away from the water. And we have a 29-acre farm, so pretty small compared to some of the operations out in Canada Carleton. So if I was elected as MP, I'll be responding and to any invitations I receive, but also I will be just getting out into the CAR community, right? And Kimburn, Dunrobin, basically everywhere I need to go. And also I will be basically working to look for the solutions. Like we've already heard that tonight, one big issue is internet, right? And I've experienced this here again tonight, and apparently in Canada, right? Surrounded by high-tech buildings, I still can't get good Wi-Fi here. And the other thing too is an open door policy, and that could be virtual, by telephone, so people don't have to come into wherever the riding office would be located. I wasn't only a doctor in the military, I was an officer. And so one thing that you're supposed to do as an officer is take care of the people around you. So I help people with administrative issues, and that is my understanding is one of the big responsibilities of a member of parliament is to help constituents out. And when they have an issue that involves the federal level of government. Now, if I'm not an MP, I'm going to continue to work at the COVID assessment clinic on Moody Drive, where I've been working since April 2020. And some of you may perhaps not remember me so fondly because I do swabs, unfortunately, up one nostril of a person's choice. But I'll be doing my shifts there. And so I've already run into people from the Canada Carleton area. And also I'll be doing my own medicine as per usual. And there too, I run into people from our riding. And then of course I'll be it hasn't worked out as much this summer because of the inconsistent weather, but when I do have free time and my husband Bill can use me, I'm cutting and baling hay. And that's basically, I'm a bit of an introvert, so I just tend to work. But if I happen to run into people, then we can always have conversations about medicine, hay, maple syrup, which we also farm, and anything else that comes to
15
mind.
seconds.
Thank you.
Okay, and thank you. And finally, Jenna Suds.
Excellent, thank you. So I'm currently living in Beaverbrook. My family moved during the pandemic, unfortunately, in January. Prior to that, we had lived since 2009. I have to think about this. Yes, 2009, just off Old Second Line out towards Murphyside Road. My husband had convinced me that he was going to build us a home. He's a contractor, and so he built our house out there, and we had our children and raised our children there until very recently. I certainly loved living rural, although it came with some challenges, as we all know, and particularly broadband. But as my kids were getting older, we decided at their request to make the move back into town, so to speak. All that to say, as city councillor for the last 3 years and deputy mayor, of course, I've made myself available to residents, and I'll continue to do the same. It's important to me to get to know our community, all aspects of our community, and to be working on your behalf. So whether that's out in Carp or Dunrobin or Constance Bay or Fitzroy, you name it, I look forward to visiting all corners of the riding and building on the relationships that I have already and the new ones that I look forward to making. I know I've had the chance recently to make some new friends in the riding. I got to meet with Roly Armitage recently. I met with the Muldoons on Dunrobin Road. Just really great to get to know some new friends as I endeavor on this trip. But also, I am an avid outdoors person. And so I do enjoy many of the trails throughout our rural wards. I'm particularly fond of Fitzroy Provincial Park for our family camping trips. So I look forward to getting to know everyone and serving you if given the opportunity.
Thank you very much. So if you don't feel obligated to take the 30 seconds that you have for rebuttals now, but we will run through the list one more time. So we'll begin with Melissa.
Thank you. So yeah, I just want to reiterate that it's so important as your member of parliament that I'm available to you and that I listen to you and that I make time for you. And I think that that's all we can do. That's really what we're elected to do, is bring your concerns forward and boldly bring your concerns forward, especially in Parliament. And that's what I'm here to do, and that's what I'm willing to do. I'm not afraid of tough conversations or a little bit of challenge. So I'm here to listen, and I'm here to make sure that you get a resolve to your issue, whatever that may be, whether it's infrastructure or simply signing off on a passport. We need to be available to everyone, and that's what I'm here to do.
Thank you very much. Jennifer McAndrew?
I just wanted to say that I feel so lucky already that I have members of our riding reaching out to me because they want to connect. You know, we have constituents. We've had the opportunity to meet with farmers, members of the OFA and the NFU, and just to hear directly from them what is the challenge. And I think as MP, that will be the best thing we can do, is hear what will make the biggest difference, whether it's cutting some of the red tape they're facing on the forums that they just don't have time to do. Some really easy things that we can fix. And I'm encouraging. What I'd really like to do is have a monthly sit down with these stakeholders from different areas of agriculture to find out what is most important to them. And we've already started those conversations, and I look forward to continuing them in the future.
Thank you very much. Scott Miller?
I realized after I went through the question, I didn't actually answer the first part of it. Where do I live? I'm in a subdivision off of March Road between Canada and Carp. So it's when we went looking, I drove around a lot for where to go. I kind of wanted 50 acres. So I'd have lots of places to go and be by myself. My wife wanted neighbors, so the kids would have somebody to play with. And this worked out to be a very nice compromise. So come by Halloween, I put on a big display, and sometimes the smoke drifts out right onto March Road.
Okay, thank you very much. Jennifer Purdy?
Yes, so basically, I just wanted to reiterate, I see a responsibility of the MP as being in three different facets. One, to represent constituents in the House of Commons, and I'm the only person who can do that without being whipped or told what to do by my party. And I mean figuratively, not literally being whipped. But the other thing too, number two, just showing up for events and that sort of thing, and supporting community organizations. And even though I am a little bit shy and I am an introvert, I'm obviously quite happy to do that. And the third thing is to help out with administrative issues. And I did have a reputation as an officer, junior or senior officer, it didn't matter, of somebody who would help people sort things out. I'm good at interpreting policy, and I would also be coaching the people who would be working with me so they would be able to provide the appropriate assistance as well. Because when you need the assistance, you get it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Jenna?
Thank you. I would just briefly reiterate that I'm here to serve. And the only way I can do that is by understanding your concerns, getting to know you, and working on your behalf. And I hope I'll have the opportunity to do that.
Thank you very much. And finally, Melissa?
I already had my say, but thank you for offering me another say.
Okay. Now there's two questions remaining. You could pick from question 2 or question 4, and it's Jennifer McAndrew's turn.
Let's go with question number 4, please.
Okay. Question.
I feel like it's Jeopardy.
Yeah, it does feel that way a little bit.
Daily double.
So one of you acknowledged that we're on the hereditary lands of the Algonquin First Nation, Anishinaabe people, and that's very true. A lot of people here have been increasingly involved and interested in issues around truth and reconciliation, which of course, focus so much attention on a number of the longstanding concerns of our First Nations. So there was a Truth and Reconciliation Commission report done that concluded in 1994, or a few years ago, that included 94 specific calls to action. It was done in 2015. Have you read the report, and are you satisfied with the progress to date in implementing the recommendations from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission?
Great. I think that this is a question that a lot of people are trying to learn more about. I know I, for one, felt that my knowledge of Indigenous Canadian history was lacking. So last fall, with the extra time I had in the pandemic, I guess if you could call it extra time, I took a course through the University of Alberta that was specifically on Canadian Indigenous history to better educate myself and understand, some of the challenges. It was eye-opening. Just the amount of information that I didn't have previously with regards to this. And I think that this is something that we definitely need to share with other Canadians. We need to, address what has happened. in our past, and we need to bring that forward, and we need to make sure people are educated so they can learn from these opportunities. The Truth and Reconciliation Act that was done in 2015, I've read parts of that, and we still need to improve. At the end of the day, we need to ensure that our Indigenous people have clean drinking water, simple things that can be fixed, that there are promises made, but we really need to now deliver on this. It's one thing to say it, but it's another thing to do it. And the importance of our Canadian history for everyone, whether it's our First Nations, whether it's our French neighbors, any of that, it's so important for our youth to see that in their curriculum and understand that, so that we can learn and move forward in a better way, so that we're educated and we're aware of what's happening. So I was fortunate. I didn't know enough, and I took it upon myself to learn more, because I think that representing our people, all of our constituents, we need to be as educated as we can on the issues in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Scott, have you read the report, and are you satisfied with the progress to date in implementing its recommendations?
I have not read the report. I'm not particularly familiar with any of the recommendations. My general approach to Aboriginal issues going forward would be a change, a break from what we've done. I wish to hell Chrétien and Trudeau, the original Trudeau, who I respected quite a bit, had the courage to push through their changes to the Indian Act, or the revocation of the Indian Act, in 1968, because we would have saved several generations of trauma. The idea is we want Aboriginal Canadians to be Canadians, the same as Chinese Canadians, or African Canadians, or Indian Canadians, or English Canadians, or French Canadians. We shouldn't be going forward with people subdivided the way we are and treating them differently. What would approach to drinking water? So I have to say, I don't fully understand the drinking water issues on reserves. Most of us here listening to this call, many of us anyway, are going to be on wells. We went out, we found somebody, you drill a well, you get a pump, you get a pressure tank. If there's bacteria in your water, you can get a UV treatment system at Home Depot for $400. You can get a RO filter for a few hundred more. The technological solutions are not difficult. So I honestly don't understand why the federal government hasn't been able to deliver on this for people. But by empowering people to solve their own problems, you're going to achieve a much better solution, and a solution that's appropriate for somebody in a given area. We keep seeing stories of a $10 million water treatment facility built for a community of 100 people. That boggles the mind, like the level of mismanagement there. Again, I simply don't understand some of these issues enough in detail to know that anything other than it has been a complete boondoggle. By converting reserves to, for example, converting them to corporate landowners, by converting reserve band structures to municipalities, and distributing the shares of the land to the people, you enable them to sell off pieces of land to invest. You enable them to sell it off if they want to move away. You enable them to own their own houses and have a stake in their own future. To treat people as children that have to be coddled by government in Ottawa it's not working. It hasn't worked, and there's easy to see why it won't work in the future. So let's not do that anymore.
Thank you, Scott. Jennifer Purdy.
Thank you. So I take a slightly different tact here. And I'm of the age where I didn't learn much about anything about Canada's history in high school, or at least the history when it comes to Indigenous people, Indigenous. A great book that I read is Tanya Talaga's All Our Relations, which is available from the Ottawa Public Library. And now I'm taking the University of Alberta course that Jen mentioned. I'm not finished it yet, though. I have read the summary report of the TRCC, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and with 94 calls to action. And have we done enough? Definitely not. I mean, tomorrow, today, yesterday, all the court cases involving Indigenous kids in court, that could be thrown out. There are other court cases that the Liberal government has continued. It's incredibly disrespectful. And it's just incredibly disrespectful. Taking another look at the foster care system across the country, because that, in terms of numbers, has replaced the residential quote unquote school system. So more definitely needs to be done. The other thing too, that the Liberal government just haven't said anything about this, and it's I do not understand this, but it is in the TRCC with regards to the unmarked and newly rediscovered graves that have been occurring throughout the summer. But what is not in there as a recommendation is looking and basically having criminal cases for perpetrators who are alive. And there's actually a list of witnesses. It's considered protected. It's held by the Liberal government. And basically, this list of witnesses was just to basically confirm that when survivors were telling their story, that it was true, which is shocking. But the witnesses who are often perpetrators right now, and given that there's no statute of limitation, if this was happening to Caucasians in Canada, you know that there'd be police reports police investigations and that sort of thing. So it is shocking that we are not doing that. So we need to do much more and start off by having a truly respectful relationship and stopping those court cases. It could be done like that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Jenna Suds.
Thank you. Reconciliation is not just an end goal, but it's a process. I have read the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report and the 94 calls to action. And I acknowledge that there is still a lot of very important critical work to do. I also don't believe that it's my position as a white person and as a settler to dictate the pace of reconciliation. Over the last 6 years, the Liberal government has taken action. 80% of the calls to action that involve the federal government are completed or well underway. 80% is done or underway, 20% still to go, and critical. Legislation has been passed to recognize Indigenous languages, child welfare, and to finally ensure that the laws of Canada are consistent with the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. So as a member of Parliament, if given the opportunity, I will continue to work with our Indigenous communities to make lasting and necessary changes as part of meaningful, true reconciliation. And I think that's the important part, meaningful, true reconciliation as partners in the journey. I'm committed to this, and I know that our Liberal Party is committed to walking the path of reconciliation with an open heart. I did want to touch on as well the boil water advisories as it was raised earlier. It is hard to get your head around how an Indigenous community can go without safe drinking water. Since 2015, 109 long-term drinking water advisories have been lifted, and 183 short-term advisories had been prevented from becoming longer ones. So the Liberals have provided communities with funding for up to 100% of the costs associated with this, but undoubtedly, there's so much more important work to be done here. Thank you.
Helps if the moderator unmutes. And finally, Melissa Conrad.
Thank you so much. So I'm concerned with the spin the Liberal candidate has put on the 94 calls to action, because to date, 6 of the 94 calls to action have been complete only. And that's really not good enough. So the NDP is willing to implement all 94 of the calls to action and get people clean drinking water. There was an interview not too long ago with a group of Indigenous people, and they said the fix that the government gave them was pallets and pallets of bottled water. Didn't give them drinking clean running water in their homes. They just deliver continuous bottles of water. So they're band-aiding the solution to say that they fixed a problem in a community, because yes, they have a supply of clean drinking water, but it comes in the form of pallets of bottles of water. And I'm not sure how you're going to bath your child in that. They also don't have recycling systems in a lot of these. So all those bottles are going into the landfill. I think we also have to look at, it's disheartening, the lack of healthcare in some of these areas, they don't have equal access like we do. They don't have the healthcare that we do. That they haven't been invested in. They don't have the infrastructure to have that available. And that's shameful as Canadians. They also don't have full education. My union has an Indigenous circle, and a few years ago, maybe 3-4 years ago, we had speakers out that say that their schools on their reserves only go up to grade 11. And why are we not investing in these children to go up to grade 12? So they have a choice to make in grade 11, to move to the nearest city, live with a strange family, and make future life decisions without their parents, or drop out of school and not continue their education. That is the option that the government has given these families. And I can't imagine my child having to make that decision and us as a family having to make that decision. That is the reality on these reserves. And I think that the other thing that the NDP wants to do is implement Jordan's principles, which has to do with healthcare, education. We are going to completely drop the disrespectful court cases that the current government has against these families. Thank you. And because the government is suing them. And why are you suing a group of people when what we should be doing is walking in reconciliation? That doesn't add reconciliation whatsoever. It drives a big wedge between the Canadian government and a population that live in our country.
Thank you. Jennifer, your opportunity for a rebuttal.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And we can speak to there are amends that need to be made for past injustice. And that is absolutely something that the Conservative government of Canada is looking to do. But I think what we also need to do is look forward and find out how we can level the playing field and how we can have prosperity through the partnerships that we can build with First Nation businesses. We have a plan as Conservatives to provide funding to help level the playing field, to cut red tape, to make things easier, because we know that Canada will be more successful and will continue to thrive when we are more inclusive and include that Indigenous component. So as soon as those Indigenous business have success, as we know they have, and can continue to grow and prosper, then that benefits all of us.
Thank you very much. Scott, 30 seconds.
To unmute. The dog didn't really care that I wasn't unmuted. So I'll restate that my platform, my wish going forward would be for all Canadians to be treated as all other Canadians are. As a percentage of people who are in Canada increases, who are not English, who are not French, who are not Aboriginal, it's going to be more and more repugnant to treat some people differently than others for good reasons or not. It's racism when you do it. If it's bad, it's racism if you do it even if you're well intentioned. And I don't think that's the way forward. But there are huge entrenched interests, as in the old Aboriginal saying is the chief's driveway is always paved. So there's
Time.
Okay, and we'll move on to Jennifer.
Yeah, so we've been hearing a little bit more, I'd say, cow patties from the Liberal candidate trying to put what the Liberals have been doing, or rather what they haven't been doing, into a better light. Stop the court cases. They could be done tomorrow with a stroke of a pen. They won't even do that. It's not just about water. It's also about housing, moldy housing, 10 to 15 people to a house. They're lucky that they haven't had more deaths from pandemic simply because people could not self-isolate appropriately. The pipeline, the TMX, the Trans Mountain Pipeline, has been going through areas and First Nations are against it. So where's the respect? Where's the reconciliation? It does not exist. And the other thing too is I'd love to hear what Cindy Blackstock, she's in charge of the Caring Society. She's an activist. I'd love to hear what she would say about the Liberal government's progress or lack thereof. It is insensitive. It needs to stop. Thank you.
Thank you. Jenna?
Thank you. I would reiterate again that the Liberal government has completed or has underway 80% of the recommendations from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report. Further, with respect to water, we have invested in 535 water infrastructure projects, including 99 new water plants and 436 plant upgrades. The comment with respect to bottled water, that is only used in very, very rare emergency situations. So that is not standard practice. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Melissa?
Thank you so much. So yes, just to reiterate that 6 of the 94 calls to action have been completed. That's 1 a year for 6 years for the current government, which is not enough. It's simply not enough. And the bottled water situation, it isn't in rare situations. This specific community said it's been ongoing for over a year, that they have been getting this water, boiling it for their children to have baths in. And it's just simply unacceptable. I think we have to do better and do more and do it with the Indigenous, not to the Indigenous people. We need to work with them. We need to find out what they need, what works best for them. Working at the General Hospital in the unit where we test tuberculosis, the amount of tuberculosis in these populations is astronomical because so many of them live together and it's so spreadable. And we can and should and have to do more for this population of Canadians.
Thank you very much, and thanks for your thoughtful comments on that particular issue. So finally, Scott, it's your turn to pick a question, and you can pick question 2.
Well, and I pick question 2.
Good man. I thought I could count on you to do that. So this is a topic that we had the most questions on by far. Lots and lots of concerns about this in the community, and in a community that's had a flood, a tornado, another flood, and a pandemic in 5 years. We're concerned about these kinds of things. Will you advocate for making addressing climate change a top priority while still managing the recovery from the pandemic? And if so, how?
No. My position, and I believe the party's position on climate change, that it may, the evidence for it is there, but it's not dramatic. And if climate is changing, it's more likely to be a natural than a human-caused event. And if humans are contributing, there's not a heck of a lot we can do about it at this rate. Canada particularly contributes in terms of CO2. I will never also, by the way, accept that CO2 is a pollutant. It's plant food. And if you're trying to tell me, you want me to admit that my kids are polluting the world with every breath they take, I will not accept that. So CO2 levels are certainly increasing. The effect they have on as a greenhouse gas are minuscule. There is a healthy debate on this, but most of the people who are in the climate change, the climate hysteria industry, their income depends on continuing the hysteria. Before, in 2019, I was here arguing that the approach we've taken of terrifying kids and telling them the planet is doomed, and we're all going to die and there's nothing we can do about it anyway, it's completely counterproductive. It was terrible for kids' mental health. You could see it then. Now that's since we've trumped that and done that 10 times over with the pandemic of fear that we put into people. But you used to see, when I was a kid in the 80s, I remember seeing on the news people who were so stressed about the threat of nuclear war, which with Russia, with the Soviets, that was the big thing at the time. They were quitting school, not doing their homework, just giving up because there's no hope. There's no hope at all. And that's the same attitudes like that with regards to climate change, that there's no hope, there's nothing we can do, the world is on fire and you're all going to die, is, even if you believe that, it's tremendously counterproductive. There are things we can do about it. But the best point I have that we have that tomorrow is not going to be a disaster is 30 years of failed predictions. The world temperature has gone up, but it's at the very lowest range of all the terrifying models. I've been posting about this. Go and Usenet. I've been posting about this for 30 years. Smiller at bnr.ca, if you can find an archive, where after lying on my back changing a starter motor in a BNR parking lot, I said, this is Canada. It's a very cold country. A little bit of global warming would be good for us, but it hasn't happened. Growing seasons are the same as they were then. So we don't have to be particularly worried about it. There's things we can do. There's very practical solutions we can achieve. Okay. Without panic.
Thank you very much. So we'll move to Jennifer Purdy. Jennifer, how would your government how would you advocate for addressing climate change, making it a top priority while still managing the recovery from the pandemic? And if so, how?
Yeah, so I do actually just want to say that you mentioned the pandemic as well, and many people, because this has not been in the media a lot, even the pandemic, yes, it was a wet market this time, but we are increasingly at risk of other pandemics, and there's actually been outbreaks of other dangerous viruses in the last year or so, and it's because of large livestock operations. I'm not talking about small farms. I'm talking about the largest livestock and operations we have here, CAFOs they're called in the States. And so it's important just for people to be aware that also even animal livestock in large operations is driving a risk for a pandemic and for climate change. And that's the other thing that most people don't know because the media is not talking about it. And it's important to know where our risk is coming from. So obviously we've had 6 years of Liberal failure on this file. Emissions are now 21% above 1990 levels. We've never achieved a climate target. And we like to, Canada's back turned out to be a lot of cow patties there too as well, unfortunately. So there's a lot of work to be done. We bought a pipeline. Oil and gas subsidies were first promised to be eliminated in 2015, but you, I, and everyone else, we are all still paying for oil and gas subsidies even this year. And the Liberals are now promising to cancel them in 2023. Liberal or conservative, climate change has been known since the mid-90s. It's been ignored by both parties. And I'm not too sure if anyone said anything when the IPCC came out with an even more dire report about climate change in August. So what to do about it? So obviously the Greens, we have the most aggressive plan. And the first thing, stroke of a pen, cancel the oil and gas subsidies and cancel the pipeline. Why is this important? Now, it just came out today, the pipeline, the TMX pipeline is way behind schedule. And the cost estimate is going to explode. It will take us to 3 to 4 degrees of heat, of warming, and we haven't hit 1.5 yet. So do the math with all the weather changes and what we've been seeing, the climate change we've been seeing in Canada Carleton, we don't want the pipeline. It will be disastrous. But what we'll do is we'll cancel TMX, cancel the subsidies, grow the new green economy, and that's going to build we're going to have tons of jobs. Look at every house out there. Look at every large building, industrial building. We have to retrofit them all and electrical grid. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Melissa, will you advocate for making addressing climate change a top priority while still managing the recovery from the pandemic? And if so, how?
I'm sorry, did you want me to go or is it Jenna that's next?
Oh, yes, it is. Sorry, Jenna.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you. So climate change is the greatest long-term threat that we face as a global community, but it is also our greatest economic opportunity. We have the skilled workforce, the innovative drive, the natural resources at our fingertips, and we have the capacity here to help the world address this growing crisis. And this is part of our pandemic economic recovery. It is hand in hand with how we grow our economy and get out of this pandemic. The Liberal government is committed to creating new middle-class jobs for Canadians by making Canada a world leader in batteries to power the clean economy and help industries adopt clean technologies to cut pollution. We're committed to creating cleaner communities with cleaner air by providing grants towards zero-emission vehicle purchases and installing more charging infrastructure. And we're committed to build a net zero electricity grid by 2035. We'll also drive down emissions from oil and gas to meet our shared goal of net zero emissions by 2050 and continue to phase out coal by 2030. We've made a lot of progress since 2015. The Liberal government has done more to fight climate change than any other government in Canadian history. We've put a price on pollution that puts money back into the pockets of Canadians. We've made new investments in public transit. We've committed to planting 2 billion trees to cut pollution and create jobs. We're banning harmful single-use plastics to protect our oceans by 2030. And we've introduced the Net Zero Accelerator Fund that will reduce emissions from sectors like steel, cement, and aluminum. The cost of climate change is undeniable. Flooding continues to be the most frequent and costly natural disaster in Canada. And this takes an emotional toll on individuals. But we're ready and we have a plan. Climate change is real and we are the only party with a concrete plan to continue to address it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Melissa one more time.
Thank you. It's a lot to keep track of. I just want to first mention that Canada is the only G7 country whose emissions went up after the Paris Accord. the only G7 country. So let's just let that sink in just for a minute. We also have the weakest targets for 2030, thanks to the current government's lack of action on getting the emissions down to this point. So we need to eliminate fossil fuel subsidies right off the bat, because why are we subsidizing the biggest polluters when we should be making them pay? We need to undo the Liberals' decision to let the big polluters off the hook. We need to make them pay more if they're going to continue down the path that they're on in order to curb the behavior. We need to cut emissions we need to cut them in half by 2030 as a start to keep our global warming to 1.5 degrees. We have to. Otherwise, we absolutely have no chance of meeting our goals for 2050 of zero emissions. We have to start now. And in doing all of this, we're going to create many jobs, hundreds of thousands of jobs in investing in green technology, electric transit, like energy efficient housing with retrofits, zero emission vehicles, and the charging units. All of that, we can develop all of that here in Canada. We don't need to import it from elsewhere. We need to create jobs here to help people get out of this pandemic and have good paying jobs that are contributing to making Canada more green. We need to create a climate bank to invest in fighting against climate disasters and climate extreme weathers that happen. I know I spent hours sandbagging in communities that I didn't even live, listening to stories and heartbreak of catastrophe and complete loss. We need to prevent that from happening again, because we have the opportunity, we have the technology, and we have the funds to invest in Canadians and invest in the future of Canada. And if we don't start now and we don't start aggressively, where are we going to be in the next election?
Time.
And finally, on this question, Jennifer McAndrew from the Conservative Party.
Great. Thank you so much. You know, as Scott mentioned, Canada only produces less than 2% of global emissions. You know, we have to accept the fact that even if we reach net zero by 2050, we are still going to have to deal with the effects of climate change. You know, I remember 3 years ago being in our dance studio parking lot, helping get broken glass from the tornado, you know, so it was safe again. And this is something we're facing extreme weather more and more often. And these are things that, you know, we can't change the past. We can't get back the memories and the possessions that people have lost, but we can definitely protect ourselves for the future and mitigate some of these things. We need to do better and have an infrastructure that is funded so that we're able to deal with these extreme things. Here in Ottawa, we get extreme colds. We've seen what March Road looks like after the winter, and we're always fixing it. We need to look at our infrastructure. That is going to be a big player in mitigating the effects of climate change. You know, smaller things that we can do, and I think Melissa touched on it a little bit. We need to hold other countries responsible and make sure that we're working with people who have the same ethical standards, human rights standards, and environmental standards that we hold at such high regard. This is the way that we can help bring down global emissions and not just the ones facing us here in Canada. You know, I'm so happy, like we've all seen, to see the community come together to face these challenges, but they shouldn't have to. We should be here to support them and provide them with an infrastructure that does that.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So with 30 seconds for rebuttal, Scott, is there something else you'd like to say?
Yeah, I hear a lot of dunking on the oil and gas industry, but the fact is Canada uses a lot of oil and gas. And if all the dunkers would volunteer to go out and turn off your natural gas tap now and stop filling your cars and stop filling your tractors, it would set a very good example for us. But it's not going to happen because we have no practical alternative. If the government of the day and the previous government were serious about that, they would have been investing in baseload nuclear generation. Is going to be the best chance to achieve that big time. We need a lot of nuclear energy. We need to be working on fusion potentially. Instead, we're letting the Chinese and the Americans to develop it. We might, if they get lucky, it might be good. We might be able to piggyback on them. But trying to set a, okay.
Thank you very much. Jennifer Purdy?
Yes. So first off, the Liberal plan and the Conservative plan are not up to the task. The NDP is getting closer. We have the most aggressive plan with we want to ensure a reduction in greenhouse gases 60% from 2005 levels by 2030. The pipeline is ridiculous. Carbon capture is a myth that does not do the job. It doesn't undo the damage that's being done. And air quality, I've already seen too many people with asthma worsening because of the forest fires and the air quality issues we had here in Canada Carleton. We need to take more decisive action. And the fact that the Liberals and the candidate are saying that's a long-term risk, ask everyone who had a tornado, experienced the flood, experienced the weather this summer, experienced the heat. The heat dome killed 800 people in BC. This is not a long-term, this is here. And if you cannot even accept that reality, then you definitely should not be an MP, and the Liberal Party should not be a governing party. We need somebody who's going to take this for everyone right now and save lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Jenna Suds.
Thank you. I'll repeat, climate change is real. And the best vote for climate change, hands down, is a vote for the Liberals. The choice here is stark. The only path for strong climate change is a re-elected Liberal government. The Conservatives, they'll take us backwards and roll back the climate action that we've made. The NDP proposals will hurt Canadian workers and industries. As an MP, I will push with my colleagues to deliver the ambitious new proposals that we have brought forward. More ambition, higher standards, tougher regulations, less pollution, and more jobs for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Melissa?
Thank you so much. So just reading between the lines here tonight and listening to the other parties, the Liberal Party is for continuing the pipeline, and so is the Conservatives. They've come out and say it outright that they plan to continue and increase our pipeline investments. And so I'm not sure how many electric cars it will take to counteract the pipeline emissions that both of these parties are willing to invest in. And we just don't have the time for that. We need to have clean technology, and the NDP's platform will invest in Canada. It will invest in good paying jobs. It will invest in cleaning up our act, literally our country right now. We will start right now. We will retrofit buildings. We will invest in the technology to ensure that the future is clean for our children, so that we don't have another 4 years of investing in pipelines and watching us become the even worse country in the G7 than we are right now.
Thank you, Melissa. And finally, Jennifer McAndrew from the Conservative Party.
Thank you so much. I think, we have a real opportunity here. This is a moment when we can look to be a leader in global technologies. We can look to build clean technologies. And as we've all noticed, Canada North is the epicenter for tech innovation that we have in this country. Why are we not using the opportunities and the ideas of Canadians to get people working to create these opportunities and these environmentally friendly procedures that we can then monetize around the world? These are things that we can be proud of, that can help us, and we need to step up our performance on a global scale and be looked at and respected as leaders, and especially on an issue like this. Thank you.
And thank you. Well, thank you, everyone. This concludes the debate tonight. Hopefully, when the next one comes around, we'll actually be able to have people in the room and have a little bit more spirited discussion, and hopefully we'll see again some of these familiar faces. I want to thank you all, that the commitment of time and energy that it takes to public life, whether it's just trying to become elected or truly serving once you have, is it's an unbelievable thing that people do. And we want to thank each and every one of you for stepping up and trying to make Canada, a stronger, better place. I think Judy would say that organizations like ours that bring residents together and give them the opportunity to hear people like you are important things. And we hope that whichever one of you is elected, that you choose to reach back out to us and ask for our advice and our assistance in helping here in West Carleton. Judy, did you want to end off the evening by speaking to the residents that have been good enough to attend tonight?
Yes, I want to thank all of the residents who've tuned in. I think this has provided a really excellent opportunity for us to get to know our local candidates, which in my view is far more important than hearing the leaders debate, but that's just me maybe. And thank you, Al, for moderating the debate, managing the questions and the order and the timing, and excellent. And big thank you to Steve, who's been working behind the scenes, but front and center of organizing this. It's really been quite a challenge. So thanks to everyone. And just one final couple of words to all of us. Please vote.
Absolutely.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good
Good
night.
night, everyone.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.